unfortunately, back to the Soundproof podcast. We're back, finally. We took a brief hiatus that, was somewhat out and somewhat in of our control, but here we all are. We're back. My name is Brendan Lewis. I go by Mr. BDog46 on the internet, and he is Jake Muller. He goes by Major Bowman on the internet.
He does indeed.
Thanks for joining us here on episode 8 of Soundproof, even though, we're about 7 days behind where we usually are.
It's fine. We had a lot going on last week. Something came up last minute.
We have a lot going on this week, too.
We have a lot going on always. That's a pretty good rule of thumb.
We're important people.
but we didn't think we could create something that we would be proud of last week, so we decided to hold off. And we're very happy with what we've put together this week, and going forward we have some pretty cool ideas, so don't go anywhere.
Yes, it should be up to our usual standards, which are, we think they're pretty good. I don't know what you guys think. If you think our standards are good, please let us know. If you don't tell us. And we're going to keep on doing what we do. But just to recap, a little change to what our scheduling is going to be. I think we mentioned this on Twitter, so if you follow us, you'll know this already. But we are pushing our our release date from Thursday to Friday, which is entirely Jake's fault. I am very flexible and open to recording.
So the one who is complaining about all this work he has to do after we record tonight.
So we are like people that do things during the day and don't get paid to make this podcast, and therefore we have to prioritize accordingly. So we're going to push the release day back to Friday just because it works a little bit better for both of our schedules. So yeah. Hopefully that doesn't impact your day-to-day function too much, and if it does, I don't care. So we're going to jump into our show for this week, and as always, we will start out with Episode 8 and all of the -08 Pokemon before going through our ladder and results, and then at the very end of our show, well, not the very end, but the second half of our show, we will be joined by Stephen Mea, most recently of Top 8 Worlds fame, to discuss local events. So we think that's a pretty cool topic and a good person that we've selected to do it. So let's jump right into it here. The -08 Pokemon, of course, the first one I feel like most people should be able to identify if you play this game. It is Wartortle. We've just kind of been counting up here. I didn't have anything to say about Wartortle until like 2 days ago. There's that Twitter account. I don't know if you follow it, Dr. Lava's Lost Pokemon or whatever.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's this Twitter account that tweets out all the the Pokemon, all those Pokemon that didn't get released because they were in betas or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the beta information leaked. But anyway, Wartortle originally had an evolution that wasn't Blastoise.
Oh.
And Blastoise was like a standalone Pokemon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, you just tweeted that out recently. I thought that was really cool. So there you go, Wartortle. Number 108 is Lickitung, which is probably one of the most just kind of generally disturbing Pokemon, I would say. And it got worse with the advent of the Gen 6 moving models as opposed to sprites.
Mr. Mime is one of those too. Mime was a little creepy at first, and then it got the moving robotic robots. Yes. I don't know. It was crazy. My favorite Lickitung thing though is Jessie's in the anime when she accidentally trades it for the Wobbuffet. And I'm sorry, Lickitung, but Wobbuffet is way more entertaining than you because I love Wobbuffet so much. Didn't
she catch it by accident too in the first place, the Lickitung?
I think she was. No, it was an accident. Oh. She I think it tried to eat her food, and then she got mad and threw a Pokeball at it.
Oh, okay.
And caught it.
There's something they caught by accident. I forget what it was. Anyway, the next one, number 208, is Steelix, which is, a cool Pokemon by design. Has rarely ever had VGC relevance. Never had VGC relevance.
Not if you ask Wolf. Didn't Wolf have a
Oh,
Steelix
that's
team?
right, that damn Steelix team. Yeah, that was a whole meme. I thought it was a cool team, but it took on a life of its own on Twitter.
Right.
And it got kind of annoying.
Yeah.
The next Pokemon, number 308, is Medicham, which is one of those Pokemon that if you had told me before the season would be VGC relevant, I would have laughed at you.
Right.
But here we are. It was taken to a finalist finish at NAIC by Graham Amity and is apparently a little bit of a thing now.
I've had enough of Medicham. It's stupid good in Pokemon Go PvP. And actually, it got nerfed recently, which I'm happy with, but it's still top 10. And I would like to see it be more top 100 because it's annoying and I hate it.
It was good before they gave it Power Up Punch.
It was okay before Power Up Punch. It was busted with Power Up Punch, but Pup is what got nerfed. They halved the power of Pup.
Oh, okay.
Like straight up halved it.
They took it just like they took it away from Kang.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next Pokemon number 408 is Cranidos, which like generally means nothing to me, although it is that one rock sync pair in Masters that kind of points to how stupid the recoil mechanic in the game is right now.
Yeah, I know Cranidos is kind of like a non-starter for me. It just kind of exists.
Yeah, it is.
When we get to Rampardos next time, I'll have plenty to say about that.
Yeah, Rampardos is kind of neat.
Cranidos,
sure, okay. Well, we'll look forward to Jake talking about Rampardos. But for now, the next Pokemon is Stoutland, which I think is cool. I've always kind of liked Stoutland. Like, I am not like super attached to Gen 5 in general, just because it's nothing against the generation. It's just not one that I have any nostalgia towards because I didn't really get to play it at the time it was around.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always liked Stoutland. It's very cool. I think its competitive design is even kind of neat, where it's like a dog that runs around in the sand.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool Pokemon. The next one is Phantump, which is the less cool and less cute of the Ghost Grasts that were introduced in Gen 6.
I don't know about that.
Pumpkaboo is adorable, and it's October. You cannot say anything bad about Pumpkaboo.
I'm not saying anything bad about Pumpkaboo. I'm just saying I also like Phantump. I
like Phantump too, but I don't think it's like a real competition between Phantump.
Phantump is more spooky though. Pumpkaboo is like the cute pumpkin-y, like it's Halloween, and then Phantump is the like.
Phantump has the nightmare fuel lore.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. And then the last Pokemon of the week, I believe this is number 808, is Meltan.
Yes.
Which was the first Pokemon that was released for Gen 8, so it is interesting in that regard, and it's even kind of a cool Pokemon. I think it's cool. It's cute. I
like the concept too.
Yeah,
I like Melmetal's a cool Pokemon.
They all come together to become Melmetal.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so that's it for our little Dex review here for this week. And again, next week we will be jumping into -09, where we get to talk about Blastoise and friends. So look forward to that. Not next week, next episode. But for now, we'll jump forward into the ladder before going in through our results. So just kind of to preface a little bit, the ladder was like kind of all over the place this week. Yeah. I was trying to find like some sort of like, trend or like anything kind of relevant to pull out of it, but it was just kind of going between like these like super standard teams, and then this team that's sitting here at, where was it? Oh, at number 8 that we'll talk about in just a sec. But there were 31 teams, and we pulled 20 teams out of the replays, so pretty good numbers. I think Jake still has the record for 20 teams out of 30, but at number 1 on the ladder this week, and I actually do like this team a lot, is Groudon, Necrozma, Duskmane, Kangaskhan, Incineroar, Stakataka, and Tapu Koko. Big Groudon weakness, but other than that, like, it's cool looking.
Yeah, that's a really bad Groudon weakness. I didn't even realize that at first glance. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks if you count Duskmane. No
Balloon
resist.
Incin.
I guess it's probably Ultra, so I guess you could at least like Earth Power it for a bunch. But
does Kang get Stomping Tantrum?
I know it gets Bulldoze.
I'm just trying to think of what kind of like text you could possibly put on there.
You can't even like Aqua Tail. There's no Kyogre. Where's the Aqua Tail?
I don't know. Oh, you could. Yeah, that's right.
You
could Aqua Tail, but it doesn't help now.
No.
At number 4 on the ladder is X-Ray, Standard Pado X-Ray with Xerneas, Rayquaza, Incin, Fini, Amoonguss, Nihilego. And, we've talked about that one at length on this podcast. I'm kind of surprised how it sort of remains relevant after it seemed like it died, a couple weeks ago. But here we are still watching X-Ray, pull results just like it did at the Open. At number 5 on the ladder, in the ongoing, copy-paste Pokemon into the last, 4 slots on Kyogre, is Koko, Whim, Incin, Amoonguss, which is maybe a unique combination that we've seen on the ladder, but definitely not anything I'm surprised to see.
No, like maybe the unique 6, but like 6 of a 9 or 10 that we always see. So
yeah,
definitely. It's like 1 mon off from the like Madison version of the Ragov team.
Yeah, I think it's Amoonguss instead of Stack, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. At number 7 on the ladder is what's kind of become like a pretty standard Xerneas Lunala 6, although I think sometimes you see Fini on there, but it is Xerneas Lunala, Kang, Crobat, Incin, and Amogus. And I think Xerneas, Lunala, Kang, Crobat is kind of like the standard core for XL at this point in the format.
Yeah, I think so. Like, Crobat gives you like a Zern matchup because Zern, Lunala, playing that Zern mirror is pretty bad. So
yep.
Yeah, it makes sense. You have like a pretty good way to stop other Xerneas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of what Crobat's calling card is.
Yeah.
At number 8 on the ladder is where we really go out to left field here with Rayquaza, Yveltal, Togedemaru, Serena, Tentacruel, and Excadrill.
What? There's 3 rapid spinners.
I mean, like, you sort of see the thought process, right? Where you're like, okay, Rayquaza, Yveltal. I don't have any Xerneas matchup. But then that's where the thought process goes off the rails when the Xerneas matchup was elected to be Tentacruel and Excadrill.
No, like, it makes sense. That you have Ray and Yveltal, they're both weak to rock, and you have Serena, Tentacruel, and Excadrill that can all rapid spin the rocks away.
Ah, of course. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is a stealth rock. Okay, I see. Question. When Delta Stream is on the field, does that reduce the damage from Stealth Rock?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
Is
It'll
it
never
only
reduce
attacks?
it from Ray itself because you come on the field before the ability's activated. But like if Ray's already on the field and Yveltal comes in,
I don't know.
it's a good question.
this
Where's
guy
the Wobbuffet? Where's Leonard? Test it.
We need to know. Test it for us. At 11 on the ladder this week, we go back to standard with Xerneas, Groudon, Incineroar, Feeny, Salamence, and Shedinja. And I think that's on the ladder 2 or maybe 3 times this week. But again, Shedinja is standard Zerndon at this point, so get used to it. At number 12 on the ladder, though, we go very far in the other direction with Rayquaza, Ho-Oh, Chansey, Koko, Incineroar, and Ferrothorn.
This definitely isn't the first Chansey we've seen on ladder on this podcast either.
Nope, I think it's the first Chansey on that archetype, though. Usually, it's been on Raynala.
I think most of the teams that have Rayquaza and Ho-Oh are probably the first unique teams of that archetype because there's probably like 2 in total.
That's fair. When you put it that way, sure. At 13 on the ladder is Necrozma, Duskmane, Kyogre, Hitmontop, Koko, Serena, and Mawile, which people are committed to using for whatever reason. But this looks like one of those like potentially what's it called? Solganium Necrozmas or
if this
something
isn't Trick Room, I'll
alternative.
eat a shoe.
Yeah. It's got to be Trick Room with some sort of, like berry or safety goggles. I don't even know what else they
I'd be
run.
pretty mad if that Hitmontop isn't Wide Guard either, because otherwise I don't think there's a reason not to use Incineroar in that slot.
Yeah. I mean, it makes your Groudon matchup a tiny bit better, I guess, which it looks to be lacking.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be the Wide Guard part too. Like,
right, yeah.
Wide Guard Ogre makes Groudon worthless, but like, if it's not Wide Guard, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, I agree. At 14 on the ladder, as we take our tour through standard Xerneas Groudon teams, this one being Kangtorn, Incin, Amoonguss, which is, thank God, more standard than Como and Mawile, which were, at the very least, my gripes with the team.
Even Kyle hasn't even using Como anymore.
Yeah, this is a little bit more palatable. At 15, same as before, Xerneas, Groudon, Salamence, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, and Shedinja. At 16 on the ladder is Spain Rain, Ray Ogre, Incin, Koko, Kartana, Nihiligo, which might end up just being the defining Ray Ogre team of the format.
Especially post-Worlds, I would think.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's going to be the most common one, I think.
Yeah.
But we all know what it does at this point. Super strong team. At 17, as people are trying to continue to play with Groudon Lunala, this team features Metagross, Koko, Crobat, and Incineroar, which isn't the worst combination I've ever seen, but I'm, still kind of have a hard time understanding Groudon Lunala, even though like it's clearly very good.
I mean, our huge
it's
thing
a personal
with it is
thing.
Like it's the Yveltal matchup. Like for us, that's the thing we've always harped on, and this has Koko, and then like Metagross can Iron Head it. I don't know.
It can Thunder Punch it.
Oh, I guess that's a thing.
Yeah, that probably doesn't KO. I mean,
and you can Super Fang it too. I guess it's workable.
Yeah, it's like tenuous, but it's okay.
Yeah.
At 18, Kyogre, Yveltal, Tapu Lele, Mawile, Kartana, and Gothitelle.
What are people thinking Gothitelle is a Pokemon in restricted
interesting.
formats?
I feel like we've talked about it before.
We
it's
have.
Just like, oh, nice, I'm going to switch in my Gothitelle and take 75% from a Precipice Blades.
Gothitelle's a Pokemon when the average attack does like 30 or 40 to it, not like 60 or 70.
it's just too much.
Yeah.
Like, it's too much. It just, like, there aren't enough EVs to put where you want them to go.
Right.
And now that Z Incineroar is a thing, like, it's not even necessarily the restricteds that you have to worry about.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. If you can make Gothitelle work, obviously Trap is super good, but, like, good luck. Gothma in restricted formats. At 19 on the ladder, Xerneas, Groudon, Kang, Torn, Incin, Amoonguss. At 21 on the ladder, Ray, Ogre, Koko, Crobat, Incin, and Ferrothorn, which, again, might be a unique 6, but, like, sure, it's a Ray Ogre team.
Yeah, it's a Ray Ogre team.
It sure is a Ray Ogre team. At 22 on the ladder is Groudon, Dawnwings, Necrozma, Kangaskhan, Tapu Fini, Amoonguss, and Stakataka. I think that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, that's neat. I haven't really seen anything like that before. Dawnwings is interesting because you get the Moongeist
That's just
beam.
the one thing, is you'd have to sell me on Dawnwings. Like, what specifically is it there
Moongeist beam. Like, that's the reason to use it over Duskmane, because I think if you're not running Moongeist beam, you'd run Duskmane, even if you're still, like, full special Ultra.
So then what are you running it over Lunala for?
For Ultra.
Oh.
Well, that's what Tommy ran. He ran Moongeist on Ultra. Yeah.
Right.
I like it, because Moongeist lets you hit other Ultra, lets you hit Lele. Like, you have a Lele matchup as Ultra that doesn't... Because, like, if you're Duskmane, like, you don't take damage from Lele, but you also don't damage it back.
Right.
But if you're Dawnwings, you can Moongeist it.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm on board. At 25 on the ladder is Groudon, Yveltal, Metagross, Koko, Incineroar, and Landorus.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Like,
have we seen that?
Like, not anything that you'd be surprised to see.
Yeah. We've seen that with the Gengar over the Metagross.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I was going to say, we've seen at least, like, 5 of those.
Right.
And then, obviously, Metagross, Koko, Incin is the team that top forward, but Landorus over the Mimikyu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think the Mimikyu kind of does more of the things that team wants than Landorus does there, but, I mean, it kind of depends on how you play it, I guess, right?
Speaking of Mimikyu.
The next team at 27 is Xerneas, Groudon, Salamence, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, and Mimikyu, and I believe that's the team that Chris Kahn built and brought at Worlds.
That's what he brought to Worlds.
Kind of like, I think that's a cool version of Xerneas, Groudon. I actually like that one a lot.
I really like Mimikyu, yeah. I think it's
Feriora, the Feriora Mimsy is, like, super cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that a lot. At 28 on the ladder, Dawnwings, Necrozma, Xerneas, Metagross, Crobat, Incineroar, and Amoonguss.
Yeah, I kind of like Dawnwings on this too. It's like, this is definitely Ultra, but like Moongeist gives you a way to hit Metagross with your Ultra for harder. Like, obviously I have Earth Power already, but Moongeist hits a little bit harder.
I feel like I have a hard time giving up Tapu Lele on those sorts of teams.
Yeah, I don't know. Ultra is a lot less threatening without Lele. That's definitely true.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I get why the other Pokemon are there, I guess, but I don't know. I'm on a big Lele kick personally, so maybe we'll just explain it as a personal bias. Finally, at 31 on the ladder this week is Kyogre, Yveltal, Togedemaru, Gengar, Incineroar, and Celesteela.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, again, like, not anything, like, not a super surprising combination, but Kyogre, Yveltal kind of underexplored, and I think that's, like, at least a unique 6 that I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I think Celesteela, like, much prefers to have Rayquaza there is the only thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we'd seen Kyogre, Yveltal much since, like, Daytona, right? I know it's what won Daytona, but...
Well, at top 8 Worlds...
oh yeah, you're right.
The, like, Koko, Metagross, and Amoonguss stuff, which is pretty cool, and that showed up. But I think the Groudon version of that is better. I think that was, like, pretty well established at that point. All right, so that's it for the ladder this week. Again, like, kind of all over the place. Nothing really to kind of pin down. I keep, like, thinking that at some point it'll come back and we'll feel like super sleuths again after, like, we found out Raid Lunala and told everybody. But this week is not that week. There's not anything super crazy here. But we're going to jump into our results here. We'll first run through, I think we have 2 regionals and a special event to talk about. Obviously Cologne was the big one. Attendance-wise, and obviously it was a super strong cut. I think it's the first time in a while that we've actually had, like, a top 16 regional cut, so we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah, I don't remember one since Dallas 2018. I think it's probably been that long.
Sad. And there was angst about it on Twitter this week too.
Yeah.
Like, damn Americans not going to their regionals. Like, what do you want from me?
I know.
And then we'll go through, like we said, all reported mid-seasons that do have a top 8 listed. And again, thank you to Zach Carlson or VGC Stats, who does kind of like tweet out all the links that people tweet at him for these local events. But we are, for the sake of, not brevity necessarily, but for the sake of relevance, I guess, gonna stay away from some of the PCs this week just because of how many MSSs we do have to go through.
And also brevity, I would say.
and brevity.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll first jump into the Cologne results here.
Yeah.
It was won by Red Silver, who was kind of running that the standard Xerneas Groudon team that we mentioned a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And those Xerneas Groudons continue to just kind of like the standard teams are established at this point. It doesn't seem like we're seeing any development of the archetype at all at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we had 2 standard teams in finals with, the Shedinja, Zerndon, Feeney stuff, and then Alex Gomez with Spain Rain. So, clearly 2 teams that have been seeing a lot of play, that have been probably very close to optimized, if not fully optimized by now. So not super surprising to see them, in the top 2 spots at a regional, I would say.
Right, and then at third in the regional was Joppy, who was running, I believe that's the Agati team. Any team that has Ditto on it, I kind of just say is the Agati team at this point. But I know that Agati had XL, Kang, Ditto. So it's at least similar like in that regard.
Yeah. Kang, Ditto, XL is definitely Agati, though.
That's made popular by Agati
right.
at the very least. And then at fourth is, the same kind of 5. I think we can kind of safely say that this is like the core 5 for Zerndon at this point, outside of the Kangtorn variant. But Zerndon, Salmons, Feeney, and Incineroar is kind of like locked in.
Right.
And then this player has Bronzong as the 6th, which is basically, I think that's a good adaptation, right? Because it gives you the opportunity to just like go, maybe it's Swords Dance Groudon, and you can just like go into that Trick Room mode.
Yeah. Gravity Blades is something that was like really, really popular in 16 and kind of died, which like I don't
know that there's necessarily even a good reason.
I was about to say that. I don't think there is either. Like maybe Lunala being so good against the 2 Gravity users, but like not every team has Lunala. It's not a super common one, so I think it's like this kind of team still definitely has a place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you have such a strong like core 5, you can definitely go a lot of directions with that 4th Pokemon, and having top 4. Maybe it was a good meta call, too. Yeah. There's a Ho-Oh in top 8, so that is a good place for Gravity Blades. But the 5th place team, kind of a wild version of Rayogre. We keep talking about how, like, we've seen all the Rayogre before.
Yeah, this guy heard us and was like, no, you haven't.
Okay, Jake and Brendan, here's my Naganadel and my Bisharp.
Yeah. Even Landorus hasn't been too common on Rayogre either.
Yeah, Ferrothorn we've seen, though.
Yeah.
I think this team at 6th is one that's like the pace is out there. Is that the Weatherball Ho-Oh team?
Oh my god, is it?
Yeah,
that's I think it might hilarious.
Be. Yeah, but the team is Kyogre,
Ho-Oh.
I just said it. Gengar, Koko, Incineroar, and Persian. I know that there is a Weatherball Ho-Oh team out there that was made popular by like I think it was a Korean player. And I don't know if that's exactly it, but it's like a thing.
Okay.
Because reasons.
7th is Eric Rios, also running Spain Rain, so no surprise there.
Yeah, I was gonna say Eric Rios and Pato running their teams, their quote unquote teams.
It's interesting that Pato went back to that because he's been straying from that, since the Berlin Internats, but went back to his roots here.
X-Ray never die.
I believe
Something like that. Yeah.
So we can run kind of quickly through the rest of cut here. We have Arash in 9th place, running. I think that might be the same 6 as one of the Zern. Dawnwings team we just talked about on the ladder.
It looks similar. No, I think it actually is. I think you're right. So there you go. That answers that question.
And then another XL in 10th place. Not the Ditto version though. It's Kangaskhan, Cart, Smeargle. And I think Smeargle with XL is super smart. Unlike the Lucario Lele version of Crackhead XL that we all know and love, the Smeargle is a huge component of that team.
Right. At 11th here is basically the same Zerndon 5 that we mentioned, but Cart in the last slot, which had some popularity. Well, I don't know about I don't know what the results were, but it definitely was like in the field at an AIC.
Yeah.
And definitely in Post Worlds. At 12th place is basically the Tommy 6, but with Incin over Smeargle? I don't think Tommy's team has an Incin, right?
That's correct.
Don't tell Tommy, but I think I like that 6 better.
No, the Smeargle's really good.
I just don't like Smeargle.
It's yeah. I mean, I don't like it either.
I mean, like, I understand it. Tommy totally lost me when he called Smeargle the defensive backbone of his team. Like,
I know. I
that
understand that. I agree. I played that team a bunch, and I really fully agreed with that point.
Well, you've got more experience with them. Smeargle defensive backbone doesn't make any sense. At 13th is that Zerndon 5 again, but with Amoonguss in the last slot, which is kind of like the original iteration of the team.
Mm-hmm.
At 14th is XL, Salamence, Feeney, Incineroar, and Amoonguss. So
like Zerndon, but with Lunala.
but with Lunala over Don, right? At 15th, XL, Kang, Coco, Incin, and Amoonguss, which, I haven't seen before, but I'm not shocked to see. But we will highlight this last team at 16th, which is Groudon, Mewtwo, Manectric, Lele, Whimsicott, and Jinx.
I have so many questions.
I have a lot too, but I don't. Okay. Sure.
I don't get it.
You win this time, low ladder.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Cologne, which again, really big tournament. Was awesome to see the turnout. There was a streamed regional with commentary, which is apparently not the norm anymore. All of a sudden,
I don't know what happened.
So it was great to see that kind of turnout and success for an event.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, as we switch over to Sword and Shield soon, we'll start to see people start to come out and get big streams again.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, as we send Ultra Series off into the Infer's Viking funeral, not so common.
Yeah.
And for example, Atlantic City, which was quite the opposite of that, which I believe had just over 100 entrants and no stream.
In fact, it was aggressively not allowed to be streamed.
It was aggressively unstreamed.
Yeah. Gotta love union laws, don't you?
Yep. I mean, they do have some of those laws in New Jersey almost specifically to police things that happen in Atlantic City because it's just one of those places. But anyway, the results of this tournament, the event was won by Paul Chua, who was just running Kangtorn and Cinemungus. It's just that kind of team is just a super Paul team, right?
Right.
Like you said,
he uses the most standard stuff for the most part. He was a big chalk guy in 2018.
He just plays so well, and then
there's no reason for him not to.
A little bit of Paul Chua luck, and off you go. The runner-up team was Colin Hire, who was running Groudon, Lunala, Salamence, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, and Nihilego, which is new at the time, but it's very similar to a lot of the things that are being run with a Nihilego Tecton.
Yeah, it's the same 6 as the world's winning team, but with the Nihilego.
Right. And it makes sense there. I like Nihilego a lot, so
I love Nihilego.
You totally understand it. The third place team, this is a team that is basically being run exclusively by Cedric Darushi. It's his team, his thing is the Groudon Yveltal, Gengar, Coco, Stakataka, and Hitmontop. A little bit different than a lot of the other Groudon Yveltal that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't think I've ever seen it before, other than from Cedric, and I kind of see what's happening. Again, this is another case of if the Hitmontop isn't wide guard, why is that not Incineroar? But
you just get run over by Groudon.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think it makes sense. It's a neat team.
Mm-hmm. At fourth place is the standard Zerndon with Cart as the 6th. At fifth place is a team that's a little different than what we've seen in the sense that it has a Mawile on it next to a Stakataka, which is kind of curious. But it is Groudon, Dawnwings Necrozma, Mawile, Tapu Lele, Stakataka, and Smeargle.
It's like the Tommy 6 with Mawile over Salamence, which is a somewhat strange substitution, if you ask me.
Mawile and Salamence are basically the same Pokemon, Jake.
I wonder if that's just standard Ultra Necrozma, or if it has Trick Room too.
I think it's Ultra. Because I talked to Andrew, he's a new player.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to him a little bit after he played Jeremy Odena.
Yeah.
And I believe he was saying it was Ultra.
Okay.
I don't know if can you fit Trick Room on that?
Yeah, I mean, you just wouldn't run Earth Power. Or sorry, you wouldn't run Moongeist.
Right. And then you would probably just be better off running NDM, although I guess that would give you a third steel type in this scenario. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a unique 6 because in the sense that it has Mawile, but he played it well. at 6th place was Jeremy O'Denna, who's running the team. He put out like a giant paste of his team that detailed like all of the thought processes, and all of his tournament runs. So that's a team that he is basically well known for using at this point. That is Ray Ogre, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, Stakataka, and Togedemaru.
I do think we need to take a quick second to shame Jeremy and anyone else who would ever use Pokemon Shuffle sprites in a team report. We love you, Jeremy.
I just I called him out for that, and he defended it.
Yeah, no, that's just
it wasn't
a
even
big
like
no
that
from
was.
me.
That's just what was available. No shuffle sprites. No. No.
That's the only negative thing I have to say, though. Otherwise, cool team. Good guy.
Yep.
Good player.
Good report, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
At 7th was X-Ray, Landorus, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, and Amoonguss. So standard, 5, but with Landorus as the last one, which, we've seen a million times before. I think that was the first iteration of the team before it had an Iligo on it.
That sounds about right.
And then the 8th place team was Radon, which had some presence at Atlantic City, which was kind of weird. I think it was maybe just because it was like a small event, but I think it also won the MSS the next day. But Rayquaza, Groudon, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, Tapu Koko, and Stakataka. I am not a huge Radon fan personally, but I understand why people like it, I guess.
I don't.
Like Radon Fini is a pretty strong 3. I don't know. Yeah, I tried it a little bit and just it didn't really click with me. But
it's not a pair I've never, it's not a pair I've ever really understood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they both kind of struggle with Ments. They
have all the stats.
Yeah, I mean that's the good part. Like, you throw a bunch of base stats together and it's hard to go wrong. But they do kind of like, as far as Ray can facilitate Ogre doing damage, but Ray can only hinder Groudon from doing damage. So that kind of flips like sense. A red flag in my head. But
yeah,
I don't know. People use it. It does some things.
Thought in those exact terms.
Yeah,
it does some things. Yep, it does damage like
on
when
occasion.
You position it. Yeah, obviously Salamence is a flaw, but Salamence you should just like kind of dropping off. Mm-hmm. It's only really on Xerneas Groudon at this point, so I guess in that sense it's like okay. But anyway, that's Atlantic City, and then the last big event that we have here is the special event in LATAM that took place in Brazil, I believe. Yes, Brazil. So the event was run by Javier Valdez, who is just like a secret genius team builder. It's just like the teams only work when he plays them. Right. So really he's like set up a perfect storm for himself. He could put out his paste and you'd see it on ladder and nobody would make it over 1200.
No.
But his team was Rayquaza, Lunala, Metagross, Tapu Fini, that is a Togedemaru and Mandibuzz. So this is actually like relatively standard looking for a team that he'd run.
This is not the wildest thing he's used.
I said relatively standard looking, and honestly, it's not like my least favorite Rayquaza Lunala team either. The runner-up was John Paul Lopez, who of course had the top 4 in AIC finish, and he was running actually a very similar team, except that he had a Gengar in the last slot here. Which I don't believe he had what was his last one at NAIC? The last Pokemon?
I don't remember.
It was Kartana.
Kartana.
Yeah. But he's got a Gengar there now, which looks like it's a regular non-Mega Gengar.
Yeah, I think it would
according
probably.
To the sprites.
I mean, I know like regular Gengars had some fringe usage recently, so I would.
Yeah, like Z-Bond.
Yeah.
Or Z-Poison even, I guess you could use. Agadi at number 3 at this tournament with Xerneas, Groudon, Kangaskhan, Tornadus, and Incineroar, and then one guess as to what the last Pokemon is.
It's Agadi, so probably Ditto, yeah. Not even the XL anymore, he just switched to Zerndom, but the Ditto still found its way onto the team.
Right, but the 4th place team is literally just his team.
Yeah. It would have been funny if he played that
Kang,
team.
Coco, Incin, and Ditto.
That team is actually in 8th place, too.
Yep. I guess they must be people he knows.
I'm sure,
The Church of Agadi is spread very strong in Brazil.
Yeah.
The 5th place team was another Rayquaza Lunala team with Tapu Fini, Incineroar, Togedemaru, and Crobat.
Yep.
A second Mandibuzz in cut on a dual primals team at number 6 there that did have Kyogre, Groudon, Gengar, Tapu Koko, Incineroar, and again Mandibuzz. So that's kind of interesting. And then the 7th place team is just Adu's Worlds team that does have Groudon, Xerneas, Aerodactyl, the Mega Aerodactyl, Tapu Fini, that is Incineroar and Kartana. Jeez, I had a hard time getting those last couple Pokemon.
You did
out
it though.
There.
You did
it. Yeah, I got it eventually, but. So yeah, that's the cut of this LATAM special event, which is not awful looking given what some LATAM results have looked like in the past. There are 2 Mandibuzz, which is a little surprising, but other than that, like not anything super out of left field.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot of crazy stuff other than Javier, but we've come to expect that by now, so not really.
It's just not even crazy when he
I know exactly. Point,
it's
expected.
It's just his thing.
All right, so we have some MSSs to hit on. There's a bunch of them,
do.
so we're going to kind of speed through them. But there's some pretty cool stuff that's popped up. The first one coming out of Portugal in Lisbon. It was back on the 21st of September, and I realize now that this is not a top 8 cut. I have included one by accident, so we're going to move on to Granada, Spain instead.
You had one job.
Did. Okay, let's make up for it. Because
it's the top 16.
Yeah.
Wow. 65 person midseason. Wow.
I don't know the last time I've seen a top 16 midseason showdown.
I mean, it's not actually like a top 16 cut. They just collected top 16 teams, I think. But
oh, right. Top 16 CP.
Because the kicker for top 16 is like 200 something.
Yeah. Top 16 CP though. They did hit that. Okay, you're right. Sorry, I was confused for a sec. Sekium won this one though. He was running Ryogre, Incineroar, Serena, Nihilego, and Ferrothorn. I feel like Ferrothorn is like a very Sekium Pokemon.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he likes to slow play stuff. Like I associate Sekium with Gastrodon as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's also a Sekium.
You paused like you were about to lay into me for a second.
No, I had to process that for a second.
Brendan,
no, you're definitely
right. Idiot. Gastrodon is not a Sekium Pokemon. The second place team is Xerneas Lunala that has double Mega with Lucario, Salamence, and then Tapu Koko Incineroar. So that I don't know if that team is like getting done everything that it needs to get done with all of its slots, but it placed well. So
yeah. So if you throw enough offense at something,
I
maybe
guess
it'll win.
Oh, your boy there at number 3, Jake.
Juan Carlos.
I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah, he's been playing again, I think.
Yeah, that
obviously.
looks basically Wolf's NAIC team, but with a Togedemaru over a Koko.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the best Ryogre variants that are out there. We've got a James Beck team at number 4.
Mm-hmm. No Megas.
We've got a Landorus on a Ryogre at number 5, so that's a little different. At number 6, we've got Yveltal, Dialga, Metagross, Koko, Incin, Landorus. That is a team. That's a lot to unpack. I can't even talk about that right now. At number 7, we've got the Koko Shedinja version of Groudon Xerneas, which I think we've been calling the Ken version on this show.
Yeah.
And then in 8th place, we have Kyogre Dialga, which is a little bit more popular in 16 than it is now.
Right.
But here we are. And then Gengar, Tapu Lele, Incineroar, and Bronzong. I don't hate that.
That's cool. Dialga, we all know I'm one of the few Dialga defenders, so
that's one of those teams that can get Groudon really hard if you're not careful.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll move on to our next mid-season, which was in Palma.
And also a top 4. I did some poor organization here. The one after that's fine though. Let's go to that.
Good, Barcelona. So yes, this one was a top 8. Can confirm. First glance shows a Pheromosa, so let's see. The winning team was X-Ray with Fini, Incin, Kartana, and Amoonguss, so nothing to write home about there. The second place team, Yveltal Kyogre with Gengar, Raichu, Pheromosa, and Stack Attack. I actually played against the Pheromosa at Atlantic City. It was annoying because it's faster than Modest Scarflele.
Oh yeah, it is.
So usually I just throw Scarflele at things that are fast, and Pheromosa is too fast to have Scarflele thrown at it. So that was frustrating, but it's kind of like an interesting Pokemon. I think it could potentially be seeing higher usage than it does in Ultra, but it's very played.
I feel like if you made the Raichu a Togedemaru, this team actually wouldn't be too far from standard either.
Right.
Yeah, I guess Raichu being faster than Togedemaru and having the faster Fake Out and Encore, probably the reason you picked it over Toge itself.
I mean, it has a niche, definitely. Standard Kangtorn at number 3. At number 4 is X-Ray with Fini, Lele, Incineroar, and Amoonguss. So kind of the double fairy there being the wrinkle. But I like Lele a lot, so I'll allow it. At number 5 is Kyogre Lunala, which you don't see a lot of because of, you guessed it, the Yveltal matchup, and then the Mega is Metagross, so like not doing yourself any favors there. Yeah. So I guess it's got to be Thunder Punch, probably maybe Thunder Kyogre even.
Oh, I can see that.
And then Coco's on the team, just because like you need to tech for it that badly. That's one of those situations I think where you think about Colbur Lunala too.
True.
X-Ray at number 6 with Landorus, the Landorus variant with Fini Incin Amoonguss. Number 7, there's Groudon Lunala with Salamence, Fini, Incineroar, and Stakataka.
Yep. And then 8 is just the Baz Gravity Hypnosis team that he won.
I hate that team. I was talking to somebody before Atlantic City, and I was like, that team ruined the format for me. I just absolutely hate it.
I feel like it's not, I don't know, it's not being used enough to like completely ruin a format for me.
It's
at
just
least.
Like it like ruined like 2 or 3 nights worth of laddering for me, just because like I kept finding out new things about it. I was like, nice, I'm in a good position. Oh good, the Lele is what's the thing called? Adrenaline Orb.
Oh god.
Okay, like,
is it really?
Yeah, because they need. I think the scarf is on Togedemaru, so you need 2 scarves. So what do you do if you need 2 scarves?
That makes sense. Baz does like Adrenaline Orb. He used it on like Jinx, I think.
I don't like it personally, but it's whatever. All right, next event is
Ciudad Real in Spain.
Yes.
The winning team was the Hirofumi team from Worlds, so the Groudon Duskmane, Menslele Stack, and Umbreon.
The 8th place team was also here.
That's correct. The 7th place team has a scissor.
It does.
It's like the
and a Serena. That's a departure from the Kyogre that we are used to seeing.
Right.
So there you go.
6th place kind of reminds me of like the 2016 X-Ray Dumpster Exodia, solely because of the Gyarados.
It has a Gyarados. Yeah. Gyarados does harken back to 2016 Dumpster Exodia.
I guess we're working up on this one. The 5th place team is Zernogre, not a variant we've seen though before. It's Gengar, Coco, Incin, Torn, which is kind of cool.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
I'm fine with that.
Top 4 had a Groudon, Lunala, Fini, Incin, Persian, Ferrothorn, which I think we can both agree. Yveltal matchup?
Just like always feel like, no, Jake. Obviously these 2 dark type cats are the Yveltal matchup.
There we go.
I was just about to say how I feel like they take up the same spot on the team, but it's like a thing that's like all over the place is Incin, cat version.
I mean, like parting shot into Intimidate is really good, so I understand.
Yeah, it is, and then you can U-turn back into Persian. Like I get it, but it's not like a team dynamic that I would run. I guess is how I would say that. The 3rd place team is Kyogre Lunala with Lucario, Lele, Incineroar, and Togedemaru. Lucario, like I was gonna go Yveltal matchup again, but Lucario does like 70% with close
it actually
combat.
is.
It does so much damage. Yeah.
It'll get dropped by Oblivion Wing after, probably, but...
And if you're justified Lucario, you can switch it and get into
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if you could give up Inner Focus, but
you probably could.
You could, theoretically, if you want to do that.
And
then the 2nd place team was XL, Lopunny, Incin, Amoonguss, and Ditto. So, not anything that we're shocked to see on XL there.
Right, moving on to our American mid-season for the week. We had one in Chicago. There's some pretty neat teams in this one. The winning team was Ray Lunala with Fini, Incin, Amoonguss, and Stakataka. So not really a whole lot to write home about there. But 2nd place team...
that's Soak. It's got to be Soak, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's definitely Soak. But it's Groudon, Zygarde, Fini, Incineroar, Shedinja, and Lantern, which... is pretty new. That, like you said, that has to be Soak on Lantern because I don't really see another reason to use it.
You know what the most fun game to play against Lantern is which Absorb is it?
Yeah.
Whenever I'm playing Grand Bats, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna Thunderbolt it. Nope. The 3rd place team is XL Lucario, Incineroar, Landorus, Shedinja, which is a unique 6, I think. I mean, sure. Okay.
Top 4 is King, Zerndon, Coco, Incin, Whimsicott. So I don't know if I've seen that either. Maybe like similar things, but kind of another take on the King Zerndon. The Whimsicott kind of replacing the Torn as like Prankster Tailwind user.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. And then as we go into top 8, there's a Zerndon Coco Shedinja. Sure. There's Pado team. Okay. Paco Taco has Xerneas Groudon, Salamence, Feeny, Persian, and Togekiss, which is maybe the first like unique and like not, I don't detest it, Xerneas Groudon version that I've seen in quite a while, so I'll have to remember to say thank you to him for that. And then the 8th place team is standard Kangtorn, Xerneas Groudon, Incin, Mogus.
Moving over to Europe, we have an Italian mid-season showdown that happened last weekend. The winner running a Kyogre, Necrozma, Duskmane, Salamence, Incineroar, Feeny, Amoonguss. That's pretty neat. I would imagine that's probably a Trick Room on the
I
Duskmane.
Actually like that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's
fun. Cool. Second place running that same Xerneas Dawnwings team that we mentioned Arash was running in Cologne. That's Duck Pond, actually, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Duck Pond. We love him.
I think he ran that in his pineapple match this week, too.
I love that like everyone's calling it pineapple. That's so funny. Top 4 is a Gardevoir. I find that fun. I love Gardevoir.
Gardevoir and Lele for double the Fairy Psychic action.
I mean, I don't understand it. I think Guard's, pretty bad in this format, but hey.
It's not good.
Yeah. I don't know. It got top 4. We like that. It's Groudon, Dawnwings, Guard, Lele, Stack, Whimsicott. Followed by a Zernogre with Lucario, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Tornadus. So it's kind of like the James Beck team, but with Lucario over Kartana.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Following that, standard Zerndon Mence with the main core with the Amoonguss. As the 6th Pokemon run by someone with the last name Carbonara, which is making me very hungry because I haven't eaten dinner yet, and it's 8:15, and I should.
Sounds like a personal problem.
It is for sure.
Okay, good. I just
had to
sure
rant
I'm
for a
not being
second.
Implicated in this. Yep. And then, do you want to finish the top 8?
Yeah, sure. Next in the top 8 is. Ray, Lunala, Incin, Coco, Feeny, Amoonguss. I think we've seen that at least once earlier in this podcast.
It looks similar,
yeah. And then number 7, a Zerndon Kangtorn with Incin, Coco as the last 2. And then 8 is, kind of a standard Zerndon with the Zerndon Mence Incineroar. Coco over Feeny. And then Jumpluff is the grass type in this case.
I don't hate it.
I don't
It's kind
either.
of like if you wanted to combine Tornadus and Amoonguss, it makes sense, right? In a sense.
Yeah,
it does. It has elements of those 2 Pokemon.
It has some cool stuff too, like Encore, Sleep Powder, Rage Powder, Helping Hand.
Yeah, it gets like a million moves.
Yeah.
Swords Dance, Seed Bomb,
Acrobatics.
All right, so we're gonna go. We've got 2 more mid seasons to cover here.
Speed right through them.
Before we hop into the latter half of our show here. This one's from Sevilla. With Xerneas, Lunala, Salamence, Tapu Koko, Incineroar, and then regular Lucario is indicated here in the last one. So sure, by all means. I mean, we know what that does. It's just follow me, and then you get a fighting type move. Which, it's a niche. The Hirofumi team at number 2. At number 3 is Groudon, Rayquaza, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, Celesteela, and Zapdos. So that seems like a team that was built on the premise of holy moly, Delta Stream is the best ability.
Zapdos had some super
I am
fringe
not
usage
weak
in,
to rock.
in, 2016.
I am not weak to electric. Yeah. It did.
But I haven't really seen it yet this year.
It's another one of those Pokemon to me that's like Gothitelle, where all's fun and games until you switch into an Ice Beam from Kyogre and take 1,000,000 damage from it. It's just like attacks that you wouldn't have expected Zapdos to be taking so much damage from. It just doesn't have the stats to stand up to. Finishing out top 4 is Ray, Ogre, Coco, Incin, Ferrothorn, and Crobat. And then in top 8 we have X-Ray with a Shedinja in that slot that would normally be the Nihilego on Pado's team, so that's interesting. We have Xerneas. That's not Xerneas. We have at number 6 Groudon, Dawnwings, Necrozma, Salamence, Tapu Lele, Pheromosa, and Ferrothorn. So Pharaoh and Pharaoh. I think Pheromosa like kind of works there because it really exemplifies the crackhead nature of Ultra Necrozma. They like, really just slap that in there too. At 7, Ray Ogre, Gengar, Incineroar, Ferrothorn, and another Zapdos. Okay. And then the last team is number 8. That is Duskmane, Rayquaza, Tapu Lele, Incineroar, Kartana, and Nihilego. Which I actually kind of like that.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. That brings us to our final mid-season of the week. Another one out of Spain. The winning team was Ryogre, Coco, Incin, Lando, Stack. Kind of fun. I think that's another unique 6, but again, the same kind of standard mons. Lando is kind of making an appearance on Ryogre recently, which is neat. Followed by that in second is Groudon, Yveltal with Coco, Incin, Gengar, Stakataka.
Seen that, yeah.
Yeah. After that, Zerndon with the Parish mode. This is just kind of the Parish standard Parish Zerndon with Gengar, Feeny, Incin, Landorus. And then we've got Ryogre with Gengar, Incin, Togedemaru, and Celesteela. So like you said, that's just kind of the Wolf NAIC team with the Tog over Coco.
It sure is.
After that's the Baz Gravity team again. Gengar, Mewtwo. Groudon, Mewtwo, Gengar, Lele, Tog, Whimsicott. There's a Murkrow in top 8. And a Rotom Wash, 2 Pokemon that have been revived from their long slumber, apparently. But that's on
a long slumber.
No, that's on Radon, Salazzle, Cart, Rotom, Murkrow. Sure, I mean,
I like how you didn't point out Salazzle as like a strange Pokemon. Jamie would be so proud.
I know. I did it for him. 7th place, Ryogre, Coco, Incin, Nihilego, Ferrothorn. Yeah, not much to say there. Then finally, Zerndon, Mence, Coco, Incin, and Hitmontop. So we get the
double the fake out Intimidate.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. All right, so that's it for our local events. For this week, again, we're going to try, I'm saying this mostly to Jake and not to the audience, to do top 8 mid-seasons, Jake.
Yeah, audience, get on this.
And then on some of the weeks where we don't have, as many events, we can continue to try and tag PCs. But for the sake of brevity, Jake's words, not mine, that's going to be it for our locals for this week. So we are going to wrap up for now the first half of the show. And again, we're going to jump into the second half where we will be joined by Stephen Mea, who goes by, of course, Gramgis on the internet and is fresh off a top 8 placement at the World Championships. To talk about the local scene, his local scene, building teams for local scenes, all sorts of local scene sort of stuff. So stay tuned. We will be back to you in just a couple seconds and back to ourselves in just a couple minutes. Welcome back, our loyal listeners. Thank you for your patronage and sticking through those several seconds of musical interlude. Jake and I are back, but this time we are joined by Stephen Mea, who we have on for our second portion of the show as our guest this week to talk about the local scene. So Jake, can you please go ahead and introduce our guest?
I certainly can. Stephen has been a member of the Snowball team recently, having won trips to various different internationals around the world and Worlds this year with a Day 2 invite. Partially in part, that's a phrase, mainly in part to winning his first regional in Toronto this year, a Moon Series regional. So that was his first regional championship, multiple top cuts, before and after that as well. And then culminating in a big top 8 Worlds finish this year. So, a very accomplished player, especially in recent months. We're very happy to have you, Stephen. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion. The topic seemed really interesting when you came to me about it.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to pull you for that too, because neither of us are super entrenched in a local scene. Brendan has some that he goes to sometimes, but I haven't played a local in almost 2 years now, actually more than 2 years now, because I don't really have many near me. And then a Premier Challenge has even been longer than that. So we wanted someone that has been a mainstay in a local scene, and you were certainly one of those.
Right, so we were kind of discussing, and we were like, if we wanted to do this topic, we should probably pick somebody from either like New York, New Jersey, or Ohio.
Yeah.
But if we picked Ohio, there are a lot of people that are mad at Ohio right now, and we thought there was a potential that we might lose listeners if we even, alluded to it too much on the show. So we decided, maybe we'll just go with New York, New Jersey. And ultimately, the reason we chose you, Stephen, is because you've been around for enough time that you can even talk to like the evolution of an entire scene. Obviously, New York, New Jersey, like back in the day, had all those super strong players where it was like one of the most strong concentrated areas, and it still has kind of become that even to this day, but just kind of like with a different subset of players. So it's, in my opinion, a super interesting region in that regard.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's like you said, like if there's the two dichotomies of the local scene where you have NYJ it's been large very recently. Numbers have gone down in the last couple of years. We'll get to that later, I guess. But and then Ohio, which has always been known for having large amounts of locals, and then I mean they became more of a hub for local events in like Gen 7, 2017, 2018. Before that, it was Utah. If anyone remembers that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Utah.
But yeah, they became even worse than Utah, like with the amount of locals that they had. Which I mean, it's not worse than Utah. It's just the number, I guess, in that regard. Like there was a period of time, I think it was in 2018, that they had 5 active TOs that I think 4 of them had access to mid seasons. Like it was ridiculous.
Wild. And such a small area too. Like it's not a big state.
Yeah, it's not the biggest.
Like everybody goes to all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't knock their community. Like they definitely have enough people to justify having two maybe even like if
and
two
good players too,
and a PC TO. And they definitely, I think, especially over the last couple of years with Ashton and Jeremy dominating the international scene, and them having a bunch of new and up and coming players like what Wesley Long was like near the top of my list of Americans I thought could make it through day 1 Worlds to day 2 this year, and he absolutely killed it in day 1. So I was super happy to see that. And they're definitely a growing region. It's just I think the issue is a lot of people don't feel that the amount of locals they have accurately reflect their, I guess, quality as a region.
Right.
In a certain regard.
You could argue that it's a little bit top heavy. Because obviously
I would argue Ohio's very top heavy.
Yeah, like Ashton and Jeremy are 2 of the best players in the country and the world, without really debate. But then like after that, it starts to fall off a little bit. And you have people come in from other areas too. So it's not like it's a bad region at all. I'm not trying to say that.
It's like especially if you look at the...
I mean, I don't have locals within 2 hours.
Oh, it's definitely a lot of jealousy. Like, I mean, even in 2017-18 when Snowball was first starting, you'd have people like Nails from Michigan where they had absolutely no locals there back then. He would drive to Ohio because that was the closest access he had. And it worked. And despite the fact that he was like having to drive all the effort he actually had to go into driving these locals, it was still extremely beneficial for him because he would be able to go to 4 events on a given weekend and still make it back in time.
Right. So anyway, this is kind of like a segue into basically like the state of locals is not what you would want it to be. I think unless you live like directly in the center of Ohio within, driving distance of all those things.
Right.
But we've kind of taken like quite a tour to get to where we are with locals right now. And of course,
agreed.
New York, New Jersey was like the biggest scene when locals launched. Like locals are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively new. Like PCs and mid seasons obviously a little newer than PCs, but local events like didn't even always exist. It used to be like an online scene that had regionals like a couple times a year, and that was it.
Yeah. We started with those premier challenges like right before Nats in 2014.
Yeah,
like 2014 that popped up, and they were worth very little. I think they were just kind of a tester. And then starting in the 2015 season,
they were just busted.
Oh, they were broken.
In 15 they were broken. Yeah.
I will fully admit I had a Worlds invite in 2015 because I farmed like premier challenges in the Southeast.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of points from those that some people just didn't have access to, and they kind of boosted my like mediocre at best regionals performances that year. And I don't know, like after 2015 they got nerfed a lot because I think they went from like 50 to 30 points or something for a win.
Yep.
I low-key think the 2016 locals spread was one of the fairest local spreads we've had.
I honestly agree.
Mid-seasons
were much less valuable, and that's when mid-seasons were created. But
they were introduced, but they were worth like 100 points.
And they were much less common.
Exactly. They were actual mid-season showdowns, which back when we had seasoned regionals, that made a lot of sense, I thought.
Agreed, yeah.
I think like, the one thing is that like with PCs being like, quote unquote nerfed as you go into 2016, you also saw local scenes take a huge hit because in 2015 everybody showed up to everything that was anywhere close because of the way that the world structure was, like the world invite structure, because of how many points they gave out, and then they changed everything as we went into 2016, and the like local numbers have been dwindling ever since then.
Yeah, I do think it's relatively important to mention. I think that the 2016 locals numbers weren't the worst. I think one thing that inflated them a lot was the very low bar for entry at Worlds 2016. That a lot of people could get their entry off of local events, and like you could realistically go to 1 or 2 regionals and then just go to your local events for like 4 or 5 months at a time and probably have your 350 points.
Right.
For me, it was really like the transition to. I began to see a lot of common trends where like it was the same things that would happen every season, where like in the middle of the season things would taper off. The early season locals always had a lot of people, and then mid-season locals would taper off a little bit, and then near the end of the year, once like all the college kids' semesters ended and like people were pushing for last-minute Worlds invites, locals would get big again, and then we'd have nationals, and then it became a cycle. But it's the whole thing that the whole portion of the cycle that all the numbers from start to bottom to the end are all getting smaller now.
Right. Yeah, I guess those trends probably still exist, but they're a little bit masked by the whole like very low numbers in general type deal.
Yeah, so. Completely. Yeah. Like our first I remember our first 2018. I think it was our first 2018 PC or MSS. I forgot what it was. Had a good amount of people out. It was like 25 people, and then our first Jersey Sun Series PC had like 12. Like it was
right.
That's a lot more like, modern.
I don't know. Going back to like 2015, I was playing PCs in like Pensacola and like Mobile, Alabama, like the Gulf Coast area, and there's like no scene there other than these locals. There's no regionals. There aren't many like players that you would recognize by name from those areas, but they were still getting like top 8 at their premier challenges very consistently. Like they were hitting like 25-30 people at these PCs, and like if you tried to run a PC in Pensacola today, you might get like 6.
Yeah. 2 fun stats I think that are good food for thought are, I remember it was March 2015, I was at a seniors PC that had 23 people, I believe, which I guarantee you will be bigger than every NA, unless something major happens when Sword and Shield drops. It'll be bigger than every Ultra Series seniors regional this year.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I saw a picture from like a regional probably 4 or 5 years ago. That had like 60 juniors or something like that, and I was floored.
And like, the second biggest stat was, I remember the big thing at Jen's first Brooklyn, New York PC of the 2016 season. That's like the one with that had like the Aaron Zhang, John Hu, like Ray Palkia finals.
Oh yeah,
everyone remembers that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The whole talk of the whole tournament, like it's this small card shop in downtown Brooklyn near Coney Island on the coast, and it's this tiny place. There's 2 floors. Like the staircase is really, really narrow and tall. Like
I've been there.
And people were packed. It was a madhouse. And the whole thing going around was we were about to hit 7 rounds and everyone was going to lose their minds.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And now Knoxville Regionals is struggling to hit 7 rounds.
I think the first event of maybe it was 20. I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2017, but I was like casting whatever it was, and
the first 18 tournament had a lot of people. That's probably the one.
Maybe it was 18.
It was Skirt Check.
I don't remember, but anyway, it was one of it was like the first event of the season that was cast, and it eclipsed 1K viewers on Twitch or something like that, which has blown every regional like for this year out of the water. So interesting. So
that was probably the first Sun and Moon PC. I remember that.
I feel like it was like more time ago than that. It was like several formats ago. It wasn't this year.
I'm not sure, because I remember talking to Jen about one time that she got hosted at like a PC or an MSS. So some random like March PC, and she got rated by Liberty Garden got rated by some channel, and they blew their viewership averages out of the water.
Oh, that's cool. Wild. Yeah.
And like the people stuck around because it was a Pokemon related channel. But I do think it's interesting. I think with locals, there's a couple of questions you got to ask yourself when you're fully analyzing like the extent of both their impact and their reasoning. I think the biggest question is their reasoning. Like, what's your primary motivation with having the local structure?
Right.
Is it to help disadvantaged areas get points? Is it to introduce new players to the scene? Is it to be like a starting point for already established online players. Like I think you kind of have to have a sense of direction with the locals, and with that, I think they've kind of lost their sense of touch with that. Like the introduction of mid-season showdowns to me had a very clear intent to it.
Yeah,
it was to subsidize the spaced out regionals that we had.
Well, they marketed it. They marketed it
exactly
with their intent, which is like one of the first times that we've ever seen them do that. So that was
it was really cool. And then you look at the locals payouts today, and you have X2 Swiss people missing CPO local, like top 8 people missing CPO locals.
Yeah, that's
and
weird.
you also have, if you haven't looked at the PC payouts for this year and last year, which I'm very surprised they didn't change. Like the difference between first and second is so marginal that it's almost ridiculous how I don't want to say how awfully, but straight up how awfully it's structured.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, because I think at this point, that the way that they've been balancing the circuit has very much just become a numbers game.
Right.
Yeah. It's become like they're throwing like instead of like reworking the structures that they have when it comes to the circuit, they're just adding things on without really thinking about, I guess, the consequences for the players
or their goals, and I think, like you said, which is like
exactly like
is like
feeling
a super
very goalless.
Good point. Yeah, is like, what exactly do you want these locals to be? Because when they were introduced, way back, I don't think that their impact on the structure and like the world invite structure was really considered at all. It was just kind of like, okay, we want players to be attending local events as
My
sort
first
of like
was a local.
this lead up to a regional, and I think that's like an admirable goal. That's fine. But then when you start throwing all these money prizes into the circuit, and like there are thousands of dollars at stake about who can attend the locals, you don't really like the integrity.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the integrity of the local, but like, it was like kind of, they were introduced innocently at first, and now that it's just kind of like a money grab scheme at this point. Like
locals are definitely not nearly as wholesome anymore, especially in areas where people have, especially in snowball populated areas. Like I can imagine, like Italian locals are bloodbaths now.
They must be.
And like,
and I think one thing that a lot of people haven't considered is something that Stephen touched on a little bit earlier, but like specifically for mid-season showdowns, they were created with the express purpose of happening in between these like massive clusters of regionals, when we used to have like 3 in a weekend or 3 over 2 weeks or something like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I think
it makes
for that
sense.
purpose they made a lot of sense, because they were like still a valuable tournament. They were worth a lot more than they are now at that point. I think Steven said 100. I don't remember exactly what the structure was for those.
It was over 100, I think.
Oh wow. So yeah, they were worth a lot.
Ridiculous.
And they were like, there was something you could like look forward to in between these larger tournaments. But now that like they're happening every weekend and their payouts are nerfed, and like there's no real difference between a PC and an MSS as far as like logistics go. Like they're both locals that happen every other weekend apparently. Like they've lost a lot of their value, I think, and their place in the circuit is there, but it's been kind of skewed and like morphed into something that it wasn't to begin with. I think that's part of the problem.
And it's all just kind of like a series of reactionary number balances at this
right.
point. Just kind of what I was saying is like what locals were originally introduced for is just like entirely gone at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, everything feels very reactionary, and there's definitely a loss of identity, I feel, with what locals are supposed to be.
I like that a lot. Loss of identity, I love that.
Loss of identity, yeah. I mean, it's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think, Stephen, like, we brought you on because you can speak to that better than anyone, is that there used to, the type of event that used to happen in those little card shops, like you mentioned, where you would get like 30 to 40 people to show up, and it was like, it's a super cool atmosphere, right? As everybody's there playing, and there are some people that are locals, that are they're casual players that are showing up for the first time, people that are at various levels of their career, where you have these guys, back in the day where Jive Time and John Evans and all those guys would show up to events. But then you would also have, newer players like, yourself when you were a senior back in the day, or, people like, this will mean more to you than to Jake, but Anthony Rosano, who shows up with his
stuff. He's cool.
And it's just like, there was this really cool dynamic at these local events that have now been replaced with these like 7-person cutthroat things where there are like thousands of dollars on the line.
Yeah, I really think that Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I think that like a lot of the things that they've been doing with locals have felt very knee-jerk reactionary, like you said, like giving out so many, like by making it open season on locals. I think another thing that's been killing, like the combination of 2019 being GS Cup and like a lot of the recent like the general downward trend of VGC combining with GS Cup was just and like the very subpar world structure is just something I think absolutely. I don't want to say it was a killing blow to a lot of local scenes, but it was a killing blow to a lot of local scenes. Yeah, it's really sad to see.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how this like lines up with GS Cup, because 2016 was kind of the start of the downfall of PCs. I think a lot of times.
Yeah, I agree.
And not necessarily specifically PCs too, but that's when we started having entry fees for regionals, and like a lot of things happened in 2016 that I think a lot of people immediately attributed to, oh, it's the Legends, GS Cup is bad. But there were so many other like circuit factors that played into it. And now like we're talking about here, locals have been taking a hit this year again. And, maybe it is GS Cup. There's like one more data point that might support that. But I do agree that it's probably a combination of a lot of other things. And maybe GS Cup being bad.
Yeah, I really hope it's it's more that like it's bad for like, because you'd go to a local. I mean, it's kind of similar to how it is today. Like, if you show up to a local and you look who's around you, it's like, okay, these 2 or 3 people are most likely to win the event. These 4 or 5 are probably making cut, and like, let's see if they can beat the top players here. And like, there's a couple people here who like quite aren't on their way yet, but like they'll get there soon. And then you have your newer players. It's like I almost feel like that whole newer player dynamics has faded away very quickly. And like, it's getting legendaries in game is very, very hard, like, and it's something that decimates local scenes especially. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that I think it could go. There's some different things that go into, I think, the reasons that regionals are going downhill, like especially like the whole you have to travel for 3 days thing is, I think, a point that's very, very underlooked.
Yeah,
and underappreciated. But that's a conversation for another day.
We could do a whole other episode on that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to spin off a little bit on you here, Stephen, because it's something that we wanted to talk about. As you mentioned, like when you show up and you see, generally like the same cast of characters that you expect to see at these events, with how like important it is for a lot of players to win these events now, do you find yourself, or do you think that players are like adapting the team that they bring to these locals based on what players they're expecting to see?
I don't disagree with that at all, and I think that gets especially worse when it comes to smaller local regions where it was for example, like I had a doubleheader 2 weekends. It was 3 weekends ago actually, it was right before AC, where I literally did that. I thought of, okay, who's going to be at this event? Like, what do I think they're going to be bringing? And this is what I'm going to bring as a reactionary response. Like, between the 8 rounds I played, the 5 Swiss rounds, and the 3 rounds of cut, I played what I expected to play. Six of the 7 rounds, the 8th one, like I got the round 1 bye. I got really lucky. But I played exactly what I ended up playing, and I can't imagine how awful this is at small local events. Like, I mean, granted, like I guess we'll go back to Ohio as an example, where you have people like Ashton and Jeremy, but then you have other players who exist in the region that are good also. People like Cedric, people like Leslie, Justin, Nick. It's like they know who each other are, and they play each other every event. And so they get very used to each other's teams, and it's definitely, and especially you combine that with I forgot who said cutthroat, but like the cutthroat mentality that a lot of these locals are becoming, it gets a lot harder in that way, because it gets a little worse and more cutthroat in that regard.
So do you think that's like, I guess the way that you phrased that last sentence kind of invalidates my question, but do you think that like that is like at least a good, like, is that a good dynamic to have at that sort of local events? Like, because that, the numbers are dwindling, do you think that sort of thing is at least like keeping the local scenes interesting, because the level of competition isn't necessarily the same with like the smaller number of people that are at them?
I think that it makes locals extreme. I think given the current setting that we have now, I think it makes locals extremely interesting. But I forgot, I think it was Jake that mentioned it before, that Snowball is really making locals a lot more competitive, because it's not like how it was a couple years back, or even this season for anyone that's not participating in Snowball. It's you have the whole year to get your local finishes in, so it's not really that big a deal if you miss out on points from one PC or one MSS. You can take it a lot more casually and like especially prep for the regionals that are coming up that are way more important. But nowadays, just with like I gotta get the last 2 years, it was like I gotta get my 2 local finishes in before this quarter is over. It's like, and I have 3, so I can only mess up with 1. So I really got to try hard for this. And I think locals are becoming much. I mean, it just comes naturally with like the longer that I think any competitive atmosphere is around, like the more hyper competitive it's going to get.
Right.
But I think it's been accelerated.
That also, it's like second-handly. That's not a word. In a second-hand way, it kind of damages like the social aspect of these tournaments too.
I agree completely.
Because you could look at locals as ways of building like a community. And I think that's part of the original like vision for these tournaments was to like support local communities and help them grow. But if these locals are turning into these like super important tournaments for multiple people at a time, they're going to be way less focused on like going and having a good time and meeting people and building relationships than they are like going and getting the job done and like making sure they're focused and in the zone and like honed in at all times. And that's like, not that it's a bad thing for them to have that mindset, because they are important tournaments, and if you're a competitor, you have to compete.
There's money on the line.
Give yourself the best chance of winning.
But that gatekeeps the people that don't want to approach those tournaments with that mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's like I said before, it's the combination of the community naturally becoming more competitive over time and Snowball that, I mean, not even just Snowball. I think that because like you could argue that for a local scene, like I guess Texas, for example, that in 2018 and this year so far, it doesn't look like they have anyone that's going to be on the Snowball, yet their local numbers are still dwindling.
Yeah.
And I would argue that, I mean, I don't go to their locals, but I'd imagine like if I live in Texas, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to my local later this weekend. Like, I'd like to win, but there's only going to be 5 or 6 people there. I know Lou's going, I know Ian's going, so I'm gonna check out what they've been using recently and just go in against that. Honestly, that was a lot harder back in the day when you had 30-40 people at like March,
you had to be
PCs and mid-seasons.
You can't counter team the entire meta. Yeah,
it was low key like a regional. Like you couldn't find a way to counter team the entire meta game.
Until you go to Texas Marathon and everyone's running men's T-Tar and you run Goggles Greninja. That's
Greninja's the ultimate counter team mod. I feel like
you just
made before.
If
you want to counter team somebody, Greninja.
Yeah, you just made sure you watched Road to Ranked the Monday before the region.
There you go.
to know you were going to play the first 2 rounds.
Exactly. Before 2015
those were the
Missouri,
days.
I practiced against Aaron's Apex team so much because I figured like there had to be people running it, and I didn't play it a single time, and I was really mad.
I think you counter team the Road to Ranked team.
I had sub Metagross against Venusaur. That's unlosable.
I do think that a more intentional structure and schedule for locals would help scenes a lot. Like if you looked at even if they didn't want to, my initial proposal would be you go back to seasoned regionals and like emphasize locals on like the sort of off periods that we used to have from like December to January and like April through early May. But I think even if you keep it like how it is today, like you could very, very both intentionally and directly schedule locals in a way that they become a lot fairer. Because I do think that, for instance, like if there's a regional going on in one weekend, like if there's a regional going on in Fort Wayne and in NorCal, like we're gonna have later this year, that leaves a good amount of the country both out of position to be able to go to the regionals. So I do think that if there was a way that they could ensure local events are scheduled in places like Portland or in Florida that weekend, I do think that would be an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah.
Is that if you could get the entire country kind of playing at once like how they used to, I thought that was a really cool dynamic.
It kind of nerfs the snowball a little bit too, because it prevents people from being at like every single event that exists in the format.
I don't think a system like that can exist with the snowball, because the point of the snowball is to get people to go to every event. So as long as the snowball exists, I don't think we'd ever go back to like
it does that, but it gets
that would
it gets 10
to
12 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it accomplishes the goal of getting people to go to every event, but only 10 to 12 people in a given top 8 region. Like it's.
I don't think you can at this point be afford to be splitting attendance between multiple events though. So I don't know.
We'd have to go back.
I guess
to our old numbers.
TCG sustains it a little bit, but.
I mean, TCG's numbers are growing.
TCG's snowball dedication is way more than ours. Like I know a bunch of TCG players, like American TCG players, went to a couple of Mexican like events last year. Like it's very very it's more cutthroat than ours is.
Yeah, and they've got more to win because of the numbers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just straight up, the world's pot is bigger. Like the regional prize pools are bigger. Like
right.
It makes sense, but
it's like a little more sustainable.
Yeah, but I think I hate to say just wait, and like I do agree that come Sword and Shield, like local attendance numbers are going to see a temporary boost. Whether that means your 7-man locals become 15-man locals or 40-man locals, only time will tell. But like,
I feel like it also feels like a do or die kind of thing too. Like at this point, we've been trending downward so heavily for so long that if like the new generation is always a boost in numbers. Like right after X and Y came out, we had some of the biggest regionals in history, and we didn't really see that as much with Gen 7. And if we don't really see it with Gen 8 either, that's probably not a great sign.
Yeah, I mean Gen 7 we kind of saw it, like both Dallas and Athens had over 300 people.
True, yeah. So it did happen,
which was amazing.
To a lesser extent, and it lasted for a lot less time.
It lasted for 2 months, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like NAIC in 15 and 17 only hit 400 people. Like we hit 400 on the nose. We barely hit the kicker for CP. I remember that year.
Right.
And I remember this year people were talking about how people were like, "Are we gonna get top 120 at Nats?" And it was like, we didn't get it in 18. And like the combination of everything is no way we're gonna get it in 19.
Yeah.
And I do think another factor for why our like maybe this initial season's locals numbers are down is the whole thing about Worlds being in Europe. Although I do agree that a lot of casual local attendees don't go for the prospect of getting a Worlds invite.
Right.
It's still slightly off-putting, especially for West Coast and Midwest regions where flights to London aren't like $400.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I think
that's more of a regionals issue though.
Yeah, we've gotten to this point that locals are just kind of like a small drop in the pond that is like the circuit structure problem, and we could and have had an entire episode about it. So let me let's spin away from the doom and gloom a little bit here.
I like that.
So Stephen, you are a player that has kind of come on in the last couple years. Obviously is culminating with this last with your top 8 worlds, which is amazing. Do you feel like being a part of your local scene like contributed to your development as a player?
I really do think it contributed to my development as a player a lot, because going to locals gives you an opportunity to both talk to people who appreciate, which is why I think locals are a great thing. It's like it gives you a chance to talk in real life with people who have the same interests as you, and with something as small as VGC, it's really hard to find. And I think being able to go somewhere, play a game in real life with people, and it's kind of cool. It's like, especially like back in the day in NYJ where we had really big locals with stream setups, like if you got knocked out of the tournament, you could just watch games. Like you're waiting for your train, you could watch the top 8 match on the side. And especially back in the day where people were very, very open. I mean, a lot of players still are today. Like I try to be, my locals too, open about talking about their thoughts on the metagame, like advice for playing, things like that. But I really do think, at least for me personally, the local scene really helped me develop as a player, gave me a lot more, I guess, confidence in myself as I began to see myself doing slightly better and better every time.
Yeah.
Because like even though like in 2016 I actually had a really bad stretch, it lasted for I think it was like 5 months that I didn't cut a local event. It was really bad. It was kind of sad, but over time, like I watched myself get better with it over time.
Yeah.
And it was cool to kind of see myself go from like the person walking and asking for advice to someone who's like walking around the venue now and just kind of like almost minding my own business, but if someone ever has a question for me, I'm more than happy to answer it, something like that.
Well, I think one of my like favorite, it probably is my single favorite experience with Pokemon so far was the Texas Marathon. And like that was entirely a local scene. It was like a week where we had, I think it was 6 PCs in 8 days or something crazy like that. And
that's really cool.
The entire like Dallas Pokemon squad, we like took turns like staying at everyone's house for the whole week. It was super fun. It was over winter break, so everyone was home, and my family had just moved to Dallas like not too long before that, so that was pretty much the reason that I like became pretty good friends with all those people in Dallas, like Blake and Ben and Oliver and that whole squad. And so that personally, like, I love competing in general, no matter if it's like Pokemon or sports or whatever. So I like having the chance to play all those tournaments at once while also becoming closer with all these cool people and just having like a crazy good time. That whole week was just super fun. Like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that a Pokemon experience will top that, and like we're not really going to have anything else like that in the future, I don't think, just because it was such a unique instance, and it was all because of the locals and that local community that like that community was hugely built up by that experience too. A lot of us got to know each other a lot better, and like the TO got to know everyone that was coming all these tournaments, and Christine is such an amazing TO in person, and so it was like so many things about that week
RT
were just so great.
That's great. Yeah, something I do recommend if you have any top players listening, is at the end of your locals, help your TO clean up. Help your TO clean up and go get food with everyone at the end.
Yeah. Oh,
it's I think like RT. the tighter bit of a friendship knot you can make with your community, the better. Like
it just makes the whole experience more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think another big thing is that it's not unheard of, and it's obviously not anything bad. Like TOs are tired. Like it's a thing.
Yeah.
Like they have to move on with their lives, but I do think that the more love and support they get from the community, the longer they'll stay around, the longer they'll be willing to stay around. And
I was going to bring that up earlier because like we were talking about different things that we can do with hosting locals in different places at different times of the year, but like one thing that you need is people to actually host them. It's like you can't just like Pokemon can't just say like, oh, there's a tournament on this day in this place, and it'll just magically pop up. There has to be like a local person who is willing to set aside a bunch of their time in preparation, and then obviously that whole day to prepare and run and clean up from the tournament and stuff. And so, the TOs are very important pieces in this circuit, and I fully agree, Stephen. Like making sure they feel supported and appreciated and wanted is very important.
Yeah, local events should not feel like an obligation
to
TOs. And it's one thing I notice a lot that I think the SoCal crew does a lot. Like I always, whenever I go on my timeline, especially near the late spring thing, I always see like Cookout Barbecue PC, and I'm just like,
yeah, I've seen them do that in Illinois a few times.
We can never pull that off. Yeah, I've seen Illinois do it too. Like even like I think local scenes, once local scenes get to know each other enough, they can have a lot of fun with their locals too. Like for NYJ personally, we had a local in. So if you've ever been to Rockefeller Center in Manhattan, there's like the whole area with all the shops above ground, but then there's a whole like little concourse underground that has restaurants, a couple more shops, and it's how you access like the ice skating rink and stuff. But like right by the restaurants, there's a bunch of tables, and in the hallway there's a bunch of tables on both sides of the hallway. People walk through the middle, and then there's tables on both sides. Outlets you can charge your phone, you can rest, drink your Starbucks for 10 minutes, and then leave. But that's where we hosted a PC there at the end of last year, and it was probably some of the most fun I had at a local in a long time. Because it was just everyone messing around in a public space, playing Pokemon, enjoying themselves. And we had some newer players that I think I probably would have been relatively confused as to why we were playing Pokemon in the Rockefeller Center concourse. But I think as the day went on, they got to like share in our fun a little bit. And I think spur of the moment things and making sure that local scenes are always supported, and like getting a tournament in if you can. I think there's really no downside to getting in a tournament if possible. So like even if you have to do it at a low-key venue like that, it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think I agree with that. The way that you kind of described like a casual atmosphere is at least to me when locals are at their best.
Exactly. And the best part was there were only 2 people at the event. Even then, like there was around like 20 people, I think. Like we got it to 24 with parents, but like there were only 2 people there that were interested in the actual CP. I'm pretty sure. Like besides maybe the 2 or 3 people like changing their Nats World Invite calcs. Like it was Paul who was going for day 2, and it was me who was just trying to maintain day 2. And honestly, like it worked out well. I'm pretty sure Paul won the MSS, I won the PC, but it was still everyone still had a good time, and it never really felt hyper competitive, which I think is something we touched on before. That would be a major boon to locals if somehow that atmosphere would start back up again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think some of the best regionals that I've participated in have also been those like more casual ones. I've also been to the PCs where it's like 6 people and everybody's like gunning for it,
right?
And
that
has a
time and 3 rounds.
That has a time and a place too. But I got into the scene because of how much fun and like enjoying the atmosphere at locals. So I think I definitely agree with you in that regard.
You got there eventually.
Oh man, it's been a long week, guys. So. Stephen, I think you might have even said this at one point, but just to kind of like wrap up this portion of the show here, if you could change one thing about locals, what would it be?
I'd probably change if I had to change one thing, it would be the distribution.
That's what I was gonna say. Like that's not exactly the most like reasonable answer, but like with no logistical constraints, I would definitely fix the geographical distribution at least.
Yeah, I completely agree. My first change would be distribution. My second would be payouts in terms of championship points. Because I think beyond that, like everything else is either minute or region specific.
Yeah.
And something that's especially region specific, but is changeable on like a TPCI scale would be distribution. Because like for example, like NorCal is a region that has a bunch of really good players, but they have absolutely no big local events.
Right.
And like something that happened over the summer was that Jim, like a TO from Ohio, moved from Ohio over to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And he's been able to, like, if we didn't get lucky and have Arbin, who was a former player that became a TO because he's still around here and he wants to give back to the community, which I absolutely love. Like, we love you, Arbin, but like if it wasn't for him, like with Jen's retirement, Chuck's retirement, and Bob charging $30 for mid-seasons, like we would have had nothing here, and Jersey especially.
Yeah.
And I think like the movement of
to see that region get to that point.
And like the movement of Jim over here, like I don't know how like the geography of Ohio works. Ashton was trying to explain it to me at a regional, but like I still see them having mid-season in PCs like almost every other weekend.
Right.
And like their players are still dominating the CP leaderboards. And I really think it's been nice to see like our region get more of a shot in regards with that. Yeah. And so I think more distribution would be better. Like I don't think I've seen a local from like you mentioned Alabama earlier. I haven't seen a local from there, from like from Georgia, right. From NorCal, like Seattle, like regions that I know for a fact has players and really good players at that.
Right. The only person I know of that's running PCs in like that deep southeast area is Joseph Remmett in Mississippi, but I think he even struggles to get people to come to his. And
yeah, I haven't seen a Mississippi PC results in a long time. It's really sad. Like,
yeah,
I couldn't.
No, I think
like if I was living in that region,
I don't really have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to like complaining about lack of access to locals, because the places I've lived in the last few years have been like outside Oklahoma City, which not exactly a bustling Pokemon metropolis. I had to drive to either Tulsa or Dallas for tournaments, and now I live in like the middle of nowhere, Texas. So again, like I'm not at all expecting to have locals in my town because it's literally just a college town with nothing else. But like the main reason I haven't been going to locals is because I got tired of driving so long for them. Like when I was living in Alabama, I had to drive like 3-4 hours to those like Pensacola Mobile PCs, and it was worth it to me at the time, and I'm glad I did it because like again that's why I have at World's End right in 2015. But it kind of got taxing, and I don't know. In an ideal world, I would love to have premier challenges within an easy drive, but it's not something I also expect on the other hand, because like again, I don't live in areas that are heavily trafficked. But given like a genie wish, like snap of the finger, I'd have locals in my town every few weeks or so.
Well, if we're getting rid of logistics in our changes, I would fix the attendance so that everybody has 100 people at their PCs.
If I was to give a more reasonable answer to that question, I don't think I really like well, I guess that's more of a snowball thing. I was gonna say I don't really like how they're like based on periods for payouts and everything, but
I think it's hard to fix locals as a whole
without
tackling the entire. Locals. I was gonna mention that.
Yeah, because they're so tied into the rest of the circuit.
Right. I think
it's
if if I was to do something more, reasonable within the scope of logistics, I would just make it so that people named Jake can't earn CP.
Oh well, I have 0 so far, so
you're shutting out half the community
there.
Shutting out half the community there.
All 6 of us.
True. There are quite a few Jakes. All right, so for the last little piece of our interview here, I think, Stephen, we usually ask people to prepare a question that they ask us. So do you have one? Are you good to go on that?
Not at the moment. I'll come up with something in the next 2 seconds. I think my main question would be, I think it was this question being an on-topic question. There's something that we mentioned before, and it's how do you guys feel about the idea of local events at regionals? I've seen it
interesting.
Because I've seen it come in different forms. I've seen it where they've had like both events, Friday and Saturday events, like a Friday event, like a Friday PC, and then a Saturday MSS. And I think for me personally, I know this is a different topic because it's regionals, but I think one of the things that does regionals in a little bit is the near required staying time of 3 days between Friday through Sunday.
That was one of the things I was going to mention.
But what do you guys think in general about the idea of having local events supplementing regionals?
So this is interesting. I think this is the first time we've had a topical question asked to us. Usually we encourage them to be off topic, but that's actually a really good question.
Yeah. So I'll come up with an off topic one while you guys talk.
So I think my thoughts on it, and we've alluded to it a couple times over the course of the show here, is that mid-seasons and locals were originally introduced for another reason. Right. And these like supplemental locals being on top of regionals is like the opposite of the reason why they were introduced. I think, Jake, you said that like mid-seasons were introduced as this like medium level tournament that fell in between regional season, and then for it to just get dumped along with the PC on top of a regional weekend, and that's not even to mention the time spent, because I totally agree with you there, Stephen, is just like feeding into the whole like CP cash grab nature of what the circuit is right now.
Right.
So personally, I'm really not a fan, but given the fact that they're making you come for this 2-day regional, I don't think that that's necessarily like the worst option that they could make available for like making you commit your whole weekend to it. I think ideally it's not a question, because regionals are 1 day and then you don't have to worry about it at all. But like this whole 3-day thing, I think not a fan overall, but I think that given the state of regionals right now, it's not like the worst.
Yeah. I think my only personal gripe with them is tournaments that happen during cut. I don't think hosting these tournaments that exclude the best people that came to your tournament is such a great idea. The ones that used to run, it's like a lot of times, I think back in 2015, a lot of regionals had Premier Challenges the Friday night before.
Friday PCs were the bomb.
Yeah, and I think those were fine. Like I enjoyed playing in those. They were a fun little tune-up before the regional, and if nothing else, it was like another chance to like see everyone, because most people that were already in town were going to be there. So I thought those were kind of cool. I kind of liked those like pre-regional Friday night PCs. I don't really like the Sunday afternoon during top cut of the regional mid-season showdown. I do think that's kind of a little much.
But I mean, if you're not streaming it, they're not missing anything.
Oh my god.
That's one way to put it.
All right. So, if both of you had to pick a VDC metagame you've played in, this might turn a couple heads, but if you had to pick a VDC metagame you've played in, give me a Pokemon from that metagame that you think is extremely overrated and why.
Ooh.
Jake's going to talk about 15.
He said overrated.
I'm down for some 15 opinion.
Well, he didn't say the format. He said something in the format that was overrated. Or are you talking about the whole format?
Oh.
Yeah, if you had to pick a Pokemon in a format that was overhyped, you don't understand why everyone used it.
Kangaskhan in literally any format.
Kangtorn.
not even that for me. Like I feel very strongly about this. I don't think Kangaskhan was ever actually that good.
That's a very interesting take.
I know it's a hot take.
I feel like it was pretty indisputably good in 14 and 15.
See, 14 was probably, I think, at its best. 15 I'm not sold.
Something that was overrated.
Silence Metagross user.
And Salamence.
I was an Abomasnow user, so
The one.
So I'm trying to think of. I mean, there have been plenty of.
How long did you ladder with Abomasnow for when Sun Series ladder dropped on PS?
Longer than I'd like to admit. I spent an awful lot of time trying to make it work. I ultimately decided that it wasn't good and that it should stay out of restricted formats, but I think that was something that everybody except me knew. And Raj.
Hey man, it's just if it wasn't Resernius.
And Toller, I think.
Toller used it at Philly, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey man, if there was no Resernius, I think it would have been fine, to be honest.
That's
even within Sin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have had a role. Okay.
I believe this brings us to our music section, my favorite part of the podcast. Because I am a music file. I was trying to think of like an analog to cinephile. I don't either. Nice. But like cinephile is a movie lover. Whatever that is for music is me.
What about like audiophile?
I don't know. We'll see.
Get it? Audiophile.
Oh no. Okay, whatever. So this is our music recommendation portion of the podcast. Since spooky season is officially upon us, my album this week is an album called Turn Off the Light by Kim Petras. She released like a Halloween kind of themed album. And if you want like your spooky, edgy, like dark, like, I don't know, I completely lost my train of thought there. But if you want to feel like scared and spooky on Halloween, listen to that album. It's like, I think it holds up the rest of the year too. Like it came out recently, so it's obviously I haven't listened to it any other time of the year, but it's really good music. It's really fun to listen to. I put it on while I'm working a lot. I've probably heard it like 10 to 15 times already just in the background. So Turn Off the Light by Kim Petras. That's mine this week.
Oh, well, if we're doing October spooky season stuff, mine's the Montermesh.
Okay.
Boom. Mic drop. I'm kidding. Okay, mine for this week is I am a big punk fan, and I keep like going back to it. That's like what I default to is like old punk stuff. So I think a lot of people have probably heard of the person Andrew McMahon, but like one of his first projects, if not his first like big project that was on a record label, is called Something Corporate, and that's my favorite project of his. I know a lot of people are like fans of Jack's Mannequin, but the album's called Leaving Through the Window. I listen to that whole album like constantly.
Nice.
Constantly.
Music.
Steven?
I don't know. I've been in last September for me was marked by a very long Billy Joel kick.
Oh,
so.
Fun.
And
yeah,
I'll throw too, right? Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a classic.
It's almost Manhattan. Yeah, I'll throw in Glass Houses as a very underrated Billy Joel album.
There you go. I like Billy Joel a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's the first recommendation we've had from that genre from any of us.
Probably,
so I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, I'm not that big of like an indie like lesser known group sort of guy. So.
And that's good because they don't play any stuff like that on the radio, so you are good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
You don't have to pay for any music services.
I know.
Exactly.
All right, so we're going to wrap up the Stephen portion of our podcast for this week. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, it was a super good discussion. I'm going to give us a pat on the back for guest selection for this week. Brennan and Jake, nice job.
Go us.
All right, and so Stephen, thanks again. Anything you want to say before we wrap up this portion real quick?
Not really. Like, I think the discussion we had was good. I think a lot of the things that are up with the VGC circuit right now, like I think it's a very long list of, I don't want to say grievances, but it's a long list of grievances, and I think having anywhere that one can almost sort of list them out and like discuss like the true reasons behind them, because I think when a lot of people discuss what's going on in the VGC circuit right now, they'll say one thing, but they won't realize that that thing is a root cause for another problem, or that came as a result of something else. I think people, if we ever actually get the chance to talk to people who have control over these things, like we should be ready with our list of actual problems and solutions instead of our knee-jerk sort of reactions. For sure. I think I think platforms like this are a great way to get the word out for things like that.
Yeah, and at this point, we now have two half episodes of Soundproof that are having information like that. Of course, this one with Steven, and then our episode with Justin Burns, which I think was episode number 2, definitely details a lot of the circuit, the shortcomings about the circuit, and some of Justin's and our proposed ways to fix it. So I guess those would be to Exhibit A and Exhibit B, I would say without any bias. If anybody ever gets a chance to talk to TPCI,
just play those podcasts, you know.
If you ever get to talk to Pikachu, just give Pikachu.
Please hit me up. I'll give you a whole script of like
perfect
things I personally believe you should say to Pikachu.
Script.
Nothing mean, just like legit.
Anyway, thanks so much, Stephen, for coming on our show. We are going to take a break for just a couple seconds, and then we will be back with our usual outro. So stay tuned for just a moment. And hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining us for episode 8 of Soundproof. Again, sorry that we were, a week behind, a week and a day, I guess, although I guess technically we're not that day behind because we have officially changed our schedules. Just a week. I'm sorry, I forget I said anything. We're only a week behind here. But again, just to reiterate, we will be launching every other Friday from now on. Friday is now Soundproof Day, so please mark your calendars every other Friday. We don't anticipate just in time for your weekend, and put it on your way to the club. Put it on in the club.
Request a song at the club, but it's actually just our podcast.
It'll be ready for you on Fridays. Again, we don't expect to have any, delays anymore. So just every other Friday, we'll be ready to go. Soundproof in the club. Big thank you to Stephen for coming on to our show this week. I thought our topic and our guest was really good for this week, and because of how good the content was, in our opinion, that was, pretty much exactly why we held off on releasing something that we felt might not have been as good last week. Right. So if you liked this week's episode, that's exactly why we didn't have last week's episode. So just, something to keep in mind. We're just going to continue to throw excuses out there until everybody's fine with everything.
I don't think it's really an excuse. I think we just made a decision that we'd rather put something out that we're proud of at a later date than kind of rush something. So yeah, like you said, I'm very happy with this interview with Stephen. He had some really good things to say, and
I like Stephen a lot.
Cool guy.
But I think
you can tell us on Twitter what you thought about this episode, and about what you might want to see in the future. We have a really cool idea for next week that I think we're both really excited about. So
yes, and I think our potential guest is also very excited about it too, because he's been asking us a lot to be on the show. So calm down. But so I think that'll be a good one. But if there's anything you want to see, any constructive feedback, feel free to add us on Twitter, DM us on Twitter. And again, find us on basically anywhere you can typically get podcasts. Spotify, anything that's supported by Anchor, we're there.
Indeed.
So, that'll do it for us. And again, come back next time for episode 9, the Blastoise episode of Soundproof.
Start naming our episodes by the Pokemon.
The Blastoise episode. But until the Blastoise episode... Until the Blastoise, I just...
Bye, everyone!
Losing it. I have so much to do tonight. Jake, I have so much work. Okay, we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.